Hey everybody, this is Jerry. So as requested, I have Mr. Red Pill Germany here. He's awesome. I've been talking to him for a little bit already, and we groove a lot. So welcome, Red Pill Germany.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. It's a pleasure to be here on your channel.
And we were just right before I started recording, we were talking about the differences between different areas of Germany, because like you said, Germany started out as a very tribal place, and the concept of Germany was pretty recent. And so for those of you who've ever been to Germany or interacted with Germans, you've probably interacted with like more northern Germans, the type that stereotypically are a little more cold, a little serious. But Red Pill Germany actually is not from that area. He's very chill. So tell me.
Yeah, so I'm from Bavaria, from the south of Germany. And I would say we are a little more traditionalist. We like our customs and our culture. We take that a little more serious maybe than people in the north or the west who would think of themselves a little bit more like Europeans or like citizens of the world, even stuff like that. While we have nothing against that per se, our regional differences and our heritage we cherish a little bit more. Of course, I have to say, everything exists on a spectrum, of course, so not all, right? But these are trends, I would say. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, I love ancient Roman history, and just looking at that sort of, humongous era in Europe, and how Rome had trouble with the Germanic tribes. And it's such a fascinating history. And I think anyone who studies history should spend some time studying the history of the Germanic region, because it's, Germany is a big superpower. It's continued to be a superpower even after devastation in World War II. And it's really cool to make a case study of the country and figure out, hey, how did Germany continue bouncing back? It bounced back repeatedly after, getting defeated many times.
Yeah, so I think studying German history can be a rewarding exercise. There is a lot to learn from that, I'm sure. If you look at the Roman Empire first, I mean, we were the barbarians kind of, and we were the refugees back then. The migration period was triggered by aggressive nomadic horsemen like Conan the Barbarian kind of tribes in the east that pushed my ancestors out of Eastern Europe, I would say. And so a lot of tribes were on the move back then, and the Roman Empire didn't really want them there, but they had to make deals with them to also protect their eastern borders. And long story short, I think we helped end the Roman Empire kind of, and we caused the Dark Ages, so to speak.
Exactly.
So I mean, if you look at early Christianity, for example, it was much more enlightened than what we know about the early Middle Ages, the migration period, or the so-called Dark Ages. And a lot of people fear, for example, that this might happen again in Europe, when the population changes too much. But if you look at German history, those guys, it was us back then.
Yeah, exactly.
I find so funny. But then the Frankish empires came up, and under Charlemagne, for example, the Frankish rulers then realized that there is a lot to learn from the Roman culture, so they started to promote Christianity, and they started to found monasteries, universities. They started how to read and to write. So and then later, actually, the Holy Roman Empire of German nations then saw itself, and the rulers saw themselves as the heirs of the Roman Empire, actually.
That's right.
Which is funny, I mean, I think.
Yeah. It's kind of similar to how when the Mongols conquered China, first they were people outside, they were barbarians, but eventually the Yuan dynasty adopted all the Chinese customs, almost all the Chinese customs, and they saw themselves as the legitimate rulers of China. It's really interesting. So there's a lot of parallels to that, and it shows as long as a culture's ready to assimilation has such a connotation now, but as long as it's ready to adapt and not completely try to impose its own culture, there is room for migration, there is room for diversity. But the problem comes when you have two people who don't want to learn from each other, don't want to adapt each other's cultures. And I think that's something that's you could potentially see now in Europe and probably in the early days with ancient Rome when the first Germanic people were migrating.
Yeah, I think so too. I think when civilizations become too successful, they become complacent, they lose the sense of danger and fear, and they become weak, one could maybe say. Maybe that word is not very good, but but one could say that maybe.
But it's true. Weak is definitely a way to describe what America's become, and China's increasingly becoming that too. Like the new my current like people like my age and younger in China, they're even more soft. Like, oh my God, I don't want to travel here because the food isn't good. And it's like, well, grow the fuck up. I hate that. But a lot of these like Chinese people who grew up in wealth, like they don't want to travel to places unless the food's good. So it defeats the point of travel. I thought travel was just to have fun, but no, you have to have like 10-piece meals in every freaking travel. It's so annoying.
Yeah, so I guess food is also very important for Chinese people, huh? Their Chinese food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is so important.
I think it was some MGTOW channel where I saw a comment on an article that even the leadership in China is now afraid that their young men become too weak, and they want to enact policies that would assure that the young generation will stay masculine and strong or something.
Oh yeah, I remember that. There was that article by Fox News Channel, and then I think it was Angry MGTOW that was talking about it. Yeah, I totally remember. Howard Dare, I think, talked about it too. But I that's the one thing I do like about the Chinese government is as much shit they do as as oppressive as they aren't afraid to tell the hard truths. And I'm glad when I was growing up in China, they gave us this little red book. It's like, this is how you keep healthy. And so many great recommendations, like eat your biggest meal during lunch, something Americans don't do, something Europeans actually do. And that's why Europeans are more fit. One of the reasons, you eat your biggest meal during lunch. So before you sleep, you're not digesting so much food and killing your body when you're sleeping. Little things like that. And so they every class in China was forced to learn from that red book. So people learn how to be healthy. But so now it's like 2.0 of that. Oh, how to be a man.
Yeah, but about that, this is actually interesting. I mean, traditionally in Europe, we do that. The biggest meal should be lunch. And from what I have heard in southern countries, they tend to still do that, I guess. But it is changing in the corporate world in Germany now because we have to be so efficient, right? I mean, our working hours are strict. Yeah? There is no overtime because the company doesn't pay for overtime, but they have to pay for overtime. So you have to be really efficient, like no water cooler talk, nothing. And the lunch break is exactly 30 minutes, which is taken out of your salary, of course. And then you have to continue working. So coming from the university, that was a very big adjustment for me. So you have to make every minute worth it, right? And so people, they stopped eating big meals at lunch. They just have a salad because that would make them so tired when they have to digest. Then at like 1 or 2 o'clock, then it would hit them. They would become sleepy and drowsy. So they actually went away from that model of eating a big lunch, and they just have these salads because otherwise they couldn't perform at their job anymore. So that's one thing where the corporate world is changing our culture really. Yeah.
That's unfortunate because one of my fondest memories when I was growing up in China was that we'd go home and have at least 2 hours for lunch. So we could eat, we could take a nap, and then go back to school. And even in elementary school, we let out at like 4, somewhere between 4 and 6, because we budgeted 2 hours at least for lunch. And it was the same for the offices. My dad was a college professor. My mom was a college professor. And they would come home and we would eat together as a family, and then we'd take a nap together as a family. And every family did that. And now China's becoming, China's like America on crack. Like people work at least 6 days a week if they're lucky. And it's so they're, I think, falling into the same trap of the corporate world. Now, the one thing I know for my Chinese company, the people there actually still do take naps. So they just go home at like 10 p.m. instead of, let's say, 8. So they still budget naps in, and maybe they still have a big lunch. But the corporate world's definitely changed some of the life cycle of sort of an average Chinese person. And I know my company, otherwise many companies, probably they do have the same light lunch model that America and Europe is increasingly running on. So it's unfortunate. It's not good for the human body or the health.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you have to do the work at the end of the day, and I think if you would tell Germans, yeah, you can have a big lunch or you can take a bigger lunch break or something like that, but you tell them, well, you have to stay until 10 p.m. On the other hand, I think most Germans would thankfully decline that offer
That's true.
because we cherish our free time, weekends, and after hours. It's kind of sacrilegious to us to sacrifice that. So I think our working model is more like be very efficient during those working hours and then get the hell out of there as soon as possible to be with the
That's
family
true.
or do some hobbies. And I prefer that actually. I mean, I worked in Japan before for a couple of years, and there the work time is just spread out, you know, as long as possible during the day. You start early and you stay until night, and
Yeah.
you work on 70% efficiency, of course, during that time. But,
So you have lived a very interesting life. See, I didn't know you worked in Japan. So tell me about how you kind of started seeing society in a different way. Was it during your time in Japan, or did you start sort of seeing the Matrix before then?
yeah, yeah. So I think naturally I have always been a little more rational, red-pilled, however you want to call it. But so I have memories even from primary school where I thought, hey, wait, why are the girls allowed to do that now and I'm not? So I always sensed, without formally being told about Preforth's law, male disposability, and hypergamy, all that stuff. I didn't know about that, but instinctually I felt that this is not fair, right? But then definitely when I basically the divorce of my parents showed me then also what that can mean for a man. The example of my dad, what it can really mean when a woman just says she's not happy anymore, right? How biased society and the courts are against men. So I really, I think I was 14 at that time. So as a young teenager, basically, I was shown that live in front of my own eyes, like happening in my own family. So
Wow.
yeah, that did the trick for me then.
So it was sounds like it was a pretty nasty divorce between your parents.
No, that's the thing. It wasn't even that nasty. It is just on a fundamental level. I think my dad is a good guy, and it almost killed him.
Wow.
So he comes from a different era. I mean, he comes from a very different world, from a rural farmer's background and Catholic, traditional. And just the very idea that when he is a loving father and a providing husband, that a woman could just, and it was really classic, you know. I mean, she kind of my mother started then being visiting like women's circles and all these things, and so I mean, of course, MGTOW say that cultural Marxism did not all of a sudden turn our women against us, but it helped to accelerate that, I would say. So females really behave collectivist. They must be shown that it is socially acceptable, that other women do it too, you know, like if not a lot of women do this stuff, then they don't do it, for example. They must be shown that others do it too, that it's okay, that the group decided this is all right. And this is what happened in my family too. And when my mother thought that it would be socially acceptable, then she just did that. And
wow.
It wasn't even a nasty divorce. I mean, by objective standards, compared to other cases I've heard, it wasn't that nasty. But to him, it was devastating.
Yeah, I bet. And to you, I mean, because your hormones are raging, you're a teenager. And it was the worst time for you to see your parents go through that.
Yeah, that's true. But luckily I could stay with my father, so my brother and me, we both stayed with our dad. So we had basically like guy's house then. Yeah.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
so
rare.
you got
but,
to be with your dad. Wow.
Yeah, that was actually pretty cool. So I learned a lot from that then. That was a pretty cool way of growing up. So one can say, even though I'm married now, but for 20 years I haven't lived with a woman. So that also changes a person, I think.
That's true. That's true. So when let's say right after you got to college, when you first started going out into the real world, transitioning, did you find that, because I have another friend who he has two brothers and he grew up with a father. His mom died when he was young. So he was a little too hyper masculine, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, when I mean hyper masculine, I mean compared to all the other guys, he was so masculine that sometimes it would rub guys off the wrong way. Did you find you had that problem at first?
Not really. I had a friend actually who was picking fights always, and it disgusted me actually. So this physical confrontation seeking behavior was never really my style. But I was like that. I was very outspoken. I mocked people a lot, and I didn't take shit from anybody. I could defend myself. I was in a couple of fights, but I never picked those fights really. I never went to someone, intimidated them, tried to dominate them, or to push them around to gain respect or favor from others. That is a common pattern, but that was maybe I'm just not that kind of guy, but that was not my problem.
Wow. Okay. So, did you date around a little before you met sort of the one, or was it like the first girl out of college or something like that?
I had a German girlfriend. That was pretty horrible, actually. There was like 1 year in school, one while I was in the military, and one while I started studying then. So 3 years, and yeah, that was pretty bad. I mean, yeah, it was my first girlfriend, but she was. I mean, if you take all these stories from the manosphere, these kind of this bitch behavior, she was an archetype, you know. She was the archetype of the manipulative girl, you know. She was good looking, but yeah, she always wanted more and more, and that was not really working well. Maybe she was also bipolar or something, or I don't know. But she was very manipulative and very overly emotional, and she just wanted me to sacrifice too much time and money for her. And back then I was pretty much deep in my studies, so I would have preferred to stay with her as a young man, of course, you know. But she pretty much said it's your studies or me, and
wow.
Well, and then she didn't verbally really say that, but this is what it came down to. And
exactly.
And I because she said, well, why don't we go to this party, or why don't we just take a trip to somewhere? And I said, well, I have a lab course, you know, and I did not kind of make any. I didn't meet her halfway there. I said, this is my future, this is my education. I'm not going to compromise on that, and that was pretty much it then.
Good for you.
Well, it was that or not study physics at all, because you cannot do this on 50%. You can just
exactly
do it fully.
To be a STEM person, you have to be 100%. You can't half-ass it, because STEM is hard. It's hard, and if you don't do 100%, you're not going to do well.
Yeah. So even like 3 years in, I still had my. Well, not fundamental doubts, but sometimes I was still a little scared. Wow, can I do that? Can I finish this class? Can I get this certification? Yeah, so I think this fear, there we go to that topic again. This fear can be really a good thing sometimes.
Yeah.
It keeps you grounded.
Yeah. So you studied physics, and are you in the physical sciences field now?
No, I was until recently. I was a postdoc and in Japan, and now I'm in the industry. So I still I'm in the lucky position, I would say, that every day I still have to do with my specialization or with physics or engineering. So I'm not just pushing paper. as many
Mm-hmm.
others do, even when they're STEM people. So I'm still working in labs and in the workshop, and yeah, so that's a pretty nice job, I think. But I'm not in science anymore.
I see. I see. Now, that period working in Japan, I bet that was very enlightening, right?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, it's a completely different society. You see, it's a very very safe place, very clean, much more German than us Germans. And you notice
Uh,
that Japanese still have these romantic ideas, or not romantic, wrong word. They have these traditional ideas, these cliche ideas about Germany. But if they went to a Western German city, they would probably be pretty much appalled by how dirty it became. But there it is still, yeah. So it's a good um, standard of life that they have. Very nice cities. I also like the countryside there, all the mountains and forests. Pretty nice. And
wow.
what?
And
Yeah.
between what years were you there?
Oh, I went there in 2007. Sorry, no, wrong. 2012 to 2012 until last year.
Oh, so you were in Japan recently. I
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Wow. Did you
And
see any of the quote unquote herbivore men there?
oh yeah. So definitely, I would say that I had to do at the university with a lot of younger people also, and of course they're science nerds, but not everyone was in science. I mean, you get to know a lot of students because I mean, a guy my age, if I was working in the industry in Europe, I wouldn't have so much contact. But if you're an expat and you come to a country where you don't really speak the language on a high level, so you first hang out with a lot of foreign guys, and most of them are language teachers or exchange students, right? And then you
Mm-hmm.
definitely get to know younger Japanese people also. And among them, many actually said, and many of the girls actually said, and these would be the dry fish women then, that having a relationship, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, would be too mendokusai. That's always the word that they use. That is a very practical word. It means something like troublesome. You know, it's bothersome. It's not worth it. You know, the juice isn't worth the squeeze is another translation maybe. But they really say that. You know, it's mendokusai. You know, you don't have time for your hobbies. Then you cannot focus on your career. And yeah, that's I would call them herbivore men when they say that. Yeah.
Wow, it's crazy because I have a friend who's half Japanese, so he goes back to visit his father. His parents divorced, so he goes back to visit his father sometimes. But because he didn't live in Japan and study in Japan, he only visits. He doesn't see herbivore men like you've seen. So it's cool to finally meet a person who's been in Japan and seen all the herbivore men.
Well, some of them at least, yeah. I
Yeah.
also heard stories of these hikikomori people, these people with extreme social anxiety who don't leave their rooms anymore and who actually get into a lot of trouble when their parents die, then they're all alone.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that's also very widespread. People sometimes mix it up or blur the lines between those two groups.
Hmm.
But yeah, Japanese society builds up a lot of social pressure on young people or on everyone basically, but in a different way on men and women. And a lot of people just can't take it, and
Yeah.
they don't want to go to school anymore. They don't want to go out anymore. And now with the internet and games, I mean, maybe they are just active in chat rooms or on social media or something, but they don't want to go out to see people.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Japanese society. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but the media definitely gives women kind of like, or gives the whole society this like perception of how women are, and like it's not a natural thing. Like they love to emphasize the kawaiiness.
Yeah.
So it's like not women aren't naturally like that when they're 30, but it's like in Japanese society, even in horror movies. I was gonna make this a stand-up set, but like in horror movies, all the women talk like little girls. So I can't take Japanese horror movies seriously because it's like she's running away from a killer and she's like
Yeah, you're allowed to be stereotypical like that, right? As a Chinese American, it's okay. Yeah, but yeah, so that was actually also something that I noticed, and I found it weird at first. So even my mother-in-law talks like that, and they're just supposed to talk like that. And also, as you said, like 30-year-old women, and it's such a funny thing, even when they have a really good career and they're powerful women, like there was this one Japanese professor, and when she talked to her student, she was like, it sounded bossy. Well, she is her boss, so she spoke with authority and with a lower voice, and I thought that was pretty normal. And then when she talked in front of the group in the meeting, she had this girly voice and was behaving very submissive, like two different people, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like they are like that. They know that they're supposed to act like that. And
I see.
In Japan, you have to wear your mask. I mean, everyone knows what is expected, and you have your different politeness levels, and you have your things that you say, things that you do, and things that you don't do, right? And it is. I don't know if they really see that as oppressive or something. It's just a role that they play. And maybe some of them would see it as oppressive and they would be susceptible to Western feminism. But also the men, I mean, sometimes they just play a role and they know it's not real, and everyone around them knows that's not real. That's what he's supposed to say. So Westerners often see that then as dishonest or something. And yeah, it is. But the key is that everyone knows it. So is it still a lie when everyone knows it's a lie?
Wow. This is pretty deep. This has got some like sociology in it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's something that you have to definitely be aware of. It's this honne and tatamae is like the honest face and the facade kind of. So these and there are many more aspects, but basically there are these two levels, like the public face and the private face.
Wow. That's so interesting.
And for us Germans, I mean, people always say, oh, the Japanese are the Germans of Asia and we have so much in common. And yeah, if you look at our love for cleanliness and punctuality and industrial production, then yes, that's what we have in common. But everything else, like culturally, we are polar opposites, and this is why Germans and Japanese is such an interesting mix, because some of the things were very similar, and in some aspects we're polar opposites. Like our language, for example, the German language is probably the most direct language and with the least context required, because we spell out everything, right? And in the Japanese language, a lot of things are omitted and they're clear from context. And also this honesty. Yeah, we're direct. You're supposed to be honest. You're supposed to say what you think. And when people figure out later, oh, that wasn't really what you thought, then it's a moral failure, right? But in Japan, everyone knows that they're playing a game, and if you're the only one who doesn't know it, then that is bad, of course.
Yeah, I've heard many. One of my friends, I mean, he's actually in the other room. I just waved to him for those of you who saw me on camera wave to a person. But his wife's Japanese, and he tells me the same exact story. It's like, yeah, they basically always mean something different. And so when you're doing business there as a Westerner, you have to realize, okay, just you have to get them to be on that level where they're comfortable being honest with you, and then you've won. But until then, it's like they'll be like, you'll never get a yes from them.
Yeah. And you also never get a no from them. That's maybe even worse. But so Westerners normally are very frustrated when they're taken out for drinking or for meals or having tea and all this socializing, right? The Westerners are here like, oh, we're on a clock here. Our flight is going in 2 days. We still haven't started the negotiations yet. Yeah, the Japanese don't negotiate with strangers, so they want to get to know you first.
Exactly. And what's really funny is this is back in 2014 when I had my first YouTube channel, the one that I've neglected for a long time. But I was negotiating with a bunch of Chinese people because they wanted to collaborate. And there's two girls and a guy, and the two girls and me and my big Russian friend, we were sitting there just chatting, just getting to know each other, kind of like the normal thing, get to know each other. And the guy comes and he immediately wants to talk business, and he like ruins the vibe because we're all just getting along. And then so it's really funny, and there is something to be said about, get to know people first because you can tell a lot about them. But then the thing is, most people are so good at putting facades. If you get to know them first, you might only be knowing facade, and then you might then trust them too much. So I think the lesson to that is business negotiations are hard, so give it time.
Yeah, especially between the cultures when they're very different and when some of the actors involved have no idea about these differences.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so did you meet your wife before or after Japan?
Yeah, I met her before. I met her in the States, actually. Yeah, I met her in the United States while I was studying there.
Wow. That's why your English is so good, because it's like your English is a very polished German accent compared to, Femhate or Felix.
These drunk Germans.
Yeah, he's drunk German accent. So.
Yeah, so I also watch a lot of American TV, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe it's from that also.
So your girl's an American girl?
No, she's Japanese actually. She's Japanese.
Wow. So you met a Japanese girl in America when you were studying in America?
Yep, that's true, yeah.
Wow. Well, the one thing good about the German law is that she definitely didn't marry you to get citizenship, because Germany is much more strict on that.
Yeah, especially now. Well, people think we let everyone in, and that is true. So, but if you want to stay, if you want to become a citizen, compared to other countries, it is very lenient still, and it always feels like we just want to push our passport to everyone, whether they like it or not. Like, please take this piece of paper so that you become one of us. But that doesn't really work, of course. The odd thing about Germany is that from many countries you can enter without visa actually, and then when you're in the country, then you can start the process, right? So when I went to Japan, for example, I had to do all this work in advance, and then when I entered the country, I was all set. Everything was already negotiated between the university and the administration, and I was good to go. I got my ID card and it was okay. But here in Germany, it's easy to get in, but then the hassle starts with the authorities, and that is a frustrating experience. I mean, I even before the migrant crisis, I remember that from a lot of Chinese PhD students and postdocs who really cursed in the end. they lost their cool when they had to deal with the German immigration authorities, because it's really easy to get in, but then when you want to be a resident, even if you don't want to immigrate here, but you just say, okay, I'm here for my PhD, I'm here for a postdoc position, I want to stay here for 5 years, 3 years. It's a lot of paperwork, and it seems like they make it up as they go along.
Yeah. Wow. So is the migrant crisis as bad as some people in right-wing media report it in America, at least in Germany? Is it that bad?
Okay, so to that I would say, on a fundamental level, it is exactly that bad, yes. And it might even be worse. However,
oh my God.
Wait.
Okay.
It is not like Germany is a war zone now, okay? So it is not like you go out and you see burning cars everywhere and people just grabbing women and pulling them into the bushes. You don't really see that stuff. But if you imagine how many people in a very, very short amount of time are entering the country, and they are not entering because they like Germany so much, right? They don't think, oh, I want to work at Siemens, I want to work at BMW, I'm an engineer, or and they don't even know our language, our culture, they know nothing, right? And they just come here, and some of them because they're really refugees, and some of them are not refugees, they're economic migrants who just come here because they get welfare. And millions of them, right? And we're unable to send them back. I think it's a question of moral strength Angela Merkel tries to tell us that it is impossible to secure the borders, then I think, well, how did we do that all those years then with sticks and stones? So what she means is, of course, not that in an era of night vision technology and drones and everything like that, that we couldn't technologically or logistically defend our borders. I think there is no political majority for unable to bring up the willpower to even do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you look at the demographic development, then I would say yes, it is bad. It could be the end of Germany. Yeah.
Wow.
But it is not like it's a war zone. So especially where I live, so it is very different in very different areas. So these many of the migrants are actually accumulating in certain inner cities, in big cities where they have a network already. So they actively avoid some areas of Germany, and they actually preferentially go to some areas, like like they really want. In the beginning, you know, they were put in very, very nice, picturesque facilities in a rural area of Bavaria. You know, they had fresh air, they had nice houses, nice beds, nice rooms, everything there. But they didn't want that. They wanted, they're young men. I mean, they wanted to go to a city. They wanted to party, you know. And I think people from the Middle East, for example, they're much more urban. There are much more people coming from big cities. They're not as rural as Germans. There are not so many big cities in Germany. Most Germans live in villages and small towns. So for us, this rural, quiet life is actually something we strive for. But they hated that. They wanted all to go to Berlin. So they organized this march to Berlin, you know. And they marched from the Bavarian province to Berlin against the law, actually, or against. I mean, they were kind of they had to stay where we put them, kind of, so that we can assure that they're spread out fairly over Germany. But then they said we want to decide where we are, and when you let the migrants decide where they live, then they will all get together in those big cities and organize and self-segregate by background. I also made a video about the physics of self-segregation with a lot of data sets on the US. So this is really a human thing. This is has nothing to do with racism or anything. Just humans just do that when they are free to move, you know. And this is what they do here in Germany. And that just means that some areas are just still very quiet and unaffected by that, and some areas become then, when the different groups clash, people from Somalia, people from Afghanistan, then Turks and Kurds who have been here earlier already, you know, for many decades maybe, and these groups, they clash together, and that produces then these images that are used then by right-winged media outlets to actually show people, and maybe this is not a wrong thing, but one should bear in mind that they do that in order to stir emotions, right?
Exactly.
And one has to remember that, yes, these things are not fabricated. They did happen, yes, but it's not like the average German sees these things ever, or unless he goes to these inner cities. I mean, if I were to go to Berlin on a warm Saturday night in the springtime, I would probably see a lot of horrible things. Or if I went to Frankfurt, but I don't live there. I live in a small town, and I don't see these things.
So the lesson to all this is, if you want to visit Germany before Germany ceases to exist, visit the cool rural areas and the villages and get a sense of German culture.
That's what I would suggest. Of course, the cities are nice too, but there you have to do your research.
I got to be careful. But Germany bans guns, right? Can you have a gun in Germany?
No.
Okay, I guess I just have to be careful of knife attacks, and I'll be okay. I mean, you know, growing up in a culture that has guns, I grew up in China, which bans guns completely, and then I grew up in America. And, you know, China's got sketchy places and cities, but I definitely felt more safe because I know, hey, as long as I have my feet, I can run away. So, you know. But in America, it's like you never know, man. With everyone carrying around guns, you know, the best way is to train yourself to use a gun too. But you know, if you don't have a gun, then shit, man. Some people,
Yeah,
your gun with their ammo infinite distance, you're screwed. You give them your wallet. Bye bye. Okay, take my
you
wallet.
cannot outrun bullets. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even, I mean, if you have a gun and you see that something is happening, then you can do something. But if something is happening to yourself, I mean, until you draw and load and put the gun, release the safety or something, right? I mean, until then, the knife is in your throat, I would say. So, I mean, if
Yeah.
you see something on the other side of the street that's happening and you and you carry a gun, then you can probably defuse the situation or help the victim or something, yes. But, well, you still have to draw your own gun. So if someone attacks you, it might be too late for that, unless, I mean,
Yeah.
if they act fast. And I mean, there are hunters in Germany, right? And they have guns. A lot of people in rural areas actually have guns, and the authorities don't even know about that. They said, "Oh yeah, that's still from the grandparents." They just have guns under the roof somewhere where nobody knows. And I think now in the future that might come in handy. That the rural areas of Germany are actually
defensive property.
I mean, they have guns. They just don't tell anyone.
Exactly. Wow. So, is military service mandatory in Germany? Because you mentioned you were in the military.
Yeah, it was. It was still for me, but they abolished it a couple of years ago. And now, yeah, we have we don't exercise the draft anymore, really. So back then, so I think my father still had 18 months in the military, and I still had 9, and then it just went down and down, and then they said it doesn't make sense anymore. So.
Wow.
But you
okay. I don't.
But you could choose, so you could opt out of it. You could do like some civil service in a hospital or care for the elderly, do stuff like that. Something with disabled children, some social work you could also do instead. So you could choose.
I see. That's fascinating. I went to college with a lot of Koreans, a lot of Singaporeans. And all the Singaporean guys and the Korean guys were 2 years older than me in the same year because, they did 2 years of mandatory military service. So it was very interesting. And I think it helps the guy because they had more discipline and because they were 2 years older. It's like the thing about, I think the neuroscientists say guys' minds mature by the time we're like 26 or so. So it's like our minds are kind of mentally a little behind women's until we reach a certain point, and then we grow infinitely. But it's like if you put an 18-year-old guy and an 18-year-old girl together, and the girl's mind just mentally is a little ahead of the guys, and that's why you see so many more women in colleges and everything, and women seem to like be getting more degrees, at least in America. It's this like age thing. Age isn't really the best way to measure a person's growth, at least if you split the guy and the girl biology. But I think military service is perfect. It's like after high school, the guy spends 2 years growing up a little, and then he comes back to college. He's better. And I wish, maybe 2 years is too much, but there was something like that in America so guys don't go into college all lost. I mean, I was so lost, and I know a lot of my peers were.
Yeah, so the military helped me with focus and discipline, definitely, but it also has disadvantages. Of course, you lose lifetime, basically. You lose income, of course. You're done with your studies later, and that is income that is missing then. But on the other hand, I mean, it's not like I'm financially struggling now, so I don't care. Across the board, it would be unfair, I guess, but it has this aspect to it that it gives young men a little more time to mature and to think about what they want to do and to find out what they're good at. That's true.
Yeah, and I just one of like sort of. I think it was Milton Friedman that made this argument, but if you're a country that the people can vote whether to declare war or not, it's best if everyone at least knows a little bit about what war is like. Because or else you're going to have people who don't know the horrors and just in general what it takes to have a military trying to dictate defense policy, and that's really bad for a country's defense.
Yeah, there is this beautiful scene from the movie Nothing New on the Western Front, where this young soldier comes back. It's in World War One, fighting the French, on the Western Front, and the German guy, who's with his whole class from school, with his whole year, goes to join the military, right? And then he sees the horrors and the death, and then he comes back, and he has to tell the next year kind of about how glorious the battle for the fatherland is and all that stuff, and he is just not so yeah he's not so enthusiastic about the war effort, and he tries to tell those young men that who have seen nothing yet, who are schoolboys basically, about the horrors of war and what it does to men, and that I cannot quote the movie now, but then basically he gets called a traitor by these schoolboys.
Yeah. It's a great movie, by the way. In English, it's called All Quiet on the Western Front.
All Quiet. Yeah, we say im Westen nichts Neues. So yeah, All Quiet. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I've read the book, and I've seen both the black and white version that you're talking about, and there's another version. There's like a color version that I've seen
right.
too.
I just know the black and white one. Okay.
Yeah, the black and white one's very good, especially the end scene. He's reaching for the butterfly. That's such a beautiful scene.
Oh yeah. Yeah, these are movies young men should watch, I think.
Yeah. So, being quote unquote, you're red pill, you're married. What do you think makes your marriage work compared to so many marriages that fall apart?
Oh, well, my marriage is not working for so long yet, but I hope it will work in the future. That's a tricky question. I mean, I basically don't live with my wife, so it's something that it's hard to really draw conclusions from them, or to apply that to other people or something, because I don't live with my wife. She's in Japan, I'm in Germany. It's
interesting. Yeah. So you guys are married, and then you guys are currently long distance for now.
Yeah. So we see each other a couple of times a year during vacation time. She comes to visit, I go there to visit, and that works quite well for us.
I see.
It's not for everyone, of course.
That's kind of a cool model for the future. It's like just you guys, find someone that you can get along with, that you're attracted to, marry them, and then don't live in even areas that are that close. So that way, it's like you always have someone, but you're not always there with each other. That you end up pissing each other off every other day.
Yeah, I think we get along quite well, but now we're both in our 30s, and we both have gotten used to being alone, and of course it's not easy then to all of a sudden live together. While I still think that women are much worse at being alone, of course, than men, so I think she would actually like to live with me, I guess, a little more. Then I think I'm more afraid of that. She is more sick and tired of being alone. Who knows? But bottom line, we both get along quite well alone.
Awesome. And do you guys try to talk via WhatsApp or something every night, or do you not talk every night?
Yeah, there's this Japanese equivalent called Line, and that's what we use.
Nice. That's cool. And so you've met your parents-in-law, and are her parents pretty traditional?
I would say so, yeah. So, the husband is the breadwinner, and traditional family, I would say, yes. And they're open-minded. I mean, the fact that they accept a foreigner, a white person, as a son-in-law is already telling us that they are not completely right-winged or completely nationalist or something, or narrow-minded. So they are open-minded, but traditional, I would say, and that fits to my character too, I guess.
Yeah, I bet when you first met them, they were like, "Oh, right." They probably they were like, "Oh, they saw you as like an exotic person."
Yeah, I think so. Probably, yeah. But probably it helps that I'm German, because Germans still have a good reputation in Japan.
Japan,
maybe that let them make their peace with the fact that I have white skin.
Yeah,
I don't think skin color matters, but like a Western foreigner and outsider who doesn't know that much.
You'll gravitate towards the country that you were once really close with, and Germany and Japan had that period when they were super close.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't know if that's really still connected to that. I mean, we had been close with Turkey too, and I don't really gravitate in that direction.
Interesting. The
but
German-Turkish connection. What happened there? When did Germany and Turkey become close?
No, I think in the First World War, they were. I hope I don't say something completely wrong now, but I think they were. They had an alliance, like the
That's
Ottoman
right.
Empire and the Reich had an alliance. I mean, the Battle of Gallipoli, for example, was also fought mainly between the Western Allies and the Ottomans, I think.
That's right. I remember studying that battle in one of my classes in college. Yeah, it was the British and the Anzac team, the Australians and the New Zealand people. That's such a fascinating battle, and the way they thought they could go into the. I don't remember which was it, the Black Sea? They're trying to get into the Black Sea, right?
Well, I think now you got me. I would have to look it up. Sorry,
it was very ambitious.
But it was something with the cliffs, like they tried to land there and charge up the cliffs or the hills or something.
Yeah.
I have to say, to my big dismay, that I only knew about this battle from the Sabaton song. You know, it's a Swedish power metal band, and they make songs about all these great battles from history. And these great battles are really something that Germans don't teach to kids in the history lessons. Like we get taught a lot about political and social stuff, but battles are never dealt with in German history instruction. So this is why, even though, of course, I mean, and this is really unfair to boys, I would say, because boys are really interested in that, and they really don't mention ever battle tactics or why is Julius Caesar won this battle and blah blah blah. They never say it because war is bad. So that's really traditionally, or from school, I would say I don't have a lot of knowledge on that, and that is embarrassing actually. So all that stuff I have to look up now afterwards.
That's so interesting because, like, in American education, right, we still learned about a lot of battles. You know, all the important battles. We learned about Lexington and Concord. We learned about Bunker Hill. And then in Civil War, we learned about Gettysburg and Antietam and Vicksburg and all that. And it's crazy. It's like, I didn't realize that in Germany, they just don't teach you those battles anymore.
Yeah, Germans just know that the Bridge of Arnhem is a movie. Or maybe Stalingrad, maybe, okay. But not the details, what really happened and who had how many tanks and why they lost and what the weather was. I mean, I think this is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
You know, when a lot of things are, on the edge of a knife, basically. So I think they try in Germany, this is part of the socialist brainwashing, I think, that history is not decided by events and great people, individuals, but by social trends and raw numbers, like what is the population density, what is the income per capita. I mean, these things are also important, but I think both is important, and they try to give us a view of history as if an individual doesn't amount to anything.
Yeah. And it goes back to where Marx got his inspiration from Hegel. You know, all those German people, they started, like you said, they started trying to move it beyond what's called methodological individualism. They try to invent all these forces that weren't the individual, that were actors or influenced the individual actors. So suddenly history became not a clash of, let's say, between people and their ideologies, but between forces beyond the people. It's crazy how, it totally makes sense. The way sort of Marxist socialism has changed people's perceptions of history, and how Germany is a little more socialist than America will affect how the education system teaches history. That makes sense totally.
Yeah, and I have a video actually, and I want to make more of that stuff in the future, but it's so much work about the physics of socio-economic systems, like that you can model the behavior of groups and people by thermodynamics, basically, or by mathematics that is loaned from thermodynamics, so that you treat large groups of people like you would treat a gas or an ensemble of particles. that moves under certain update rules or differential equations and is influenced by some forces and fields and pressure and stuff like that. And in many instances, this gives surprisingly good results, right? But I wouldn't want to be ideological about it. I think a lot of things can, in fact, be explained by these greater social or economic forces and have nothing to do with individual moral excellence or failure or ideology. But a lot of things in history on the other end are, and I think both is happening at the same time. And this is where ideologues get in trouble, I guess, because they get 50% right and the other 50% they get wrong. That's my personal opinion, because I know both sides. There is this realm of the physics of socio-economic systems, but I know that history was also decided by people, by great personalities who might have just been, the spark that ignited the entire barrel of powder. But we need those people. Yeah? Just imagine, it was, and people are sick of the establishment in America. But what if there hadn't been such a guy as Trump? In Germany, people are sick also, but there is no such figure, There is no charismatic leader who just says, I don't care how they try to pull my name into the dirt and what the entire country, the entire media against me. I don't care. I do this, There is nobody like that. So there is a lot of potential. The social forces are there, the force fields are aligned, so to speak. But this ignition spark is just not there. And the entire Republican nominee group, I think none of them could have done that.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't forget about that. Yeah, there is the Rust Belt and there is the economic situation, there is the loss of jobs, there is all that stuff, right? That people are sick and tired of the establishment. Yes, but you need that guy that is then saying, well, follow my lead and I will take care of that. And if we march into that direction and if you follow this and that, then we get that. And I don't know if he will deliver, but without that charismatic guy, it wouldn't have worked. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. You are completely right. So, do most people in rural areas in Germany like Trump, or is it kind of mixed?
That is a good question. So, I don't think they know Trump because most of them don't watch like foreign media. They don't follow foreign media, and they also probably don't follow the alternative media. So if you would just watch CNN, it would be just as bad, right?
Yeah.
But the German media presents a very caricature-like warped image of Donald Trump. It's even sometimes worse, I think, than what CNN or the New York Times are doing. So I sometimes see co-workers coming to work and they are just saying basically during the coffee break or lunch break or something the exact same thing that the headline was the night before in the news or something. And that is just, Trump is a madman. He's a complete lunatic. He's an idiot. He has no education, no manners. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's dangerous. He's a woman hater. Like, I think you get the picture. Huh? But there are some of them, and they are the ones who also like Putin, for example, So there are a lot of people who demonstrate against the system in Germany, and they're not really friends of the Russians or something, but they have an understanding for what Putin is doing or people like that. So they kind of understand where they're coming from, and that they probably don't like a lot of things that Putin does, or that but some of the other things they can understand. And with Trump, it's the same thing. So they also start to wonder if that is true. And I have actually some friends who also consume more social media and alternative news, and they are also in that domain, quote unquote, red-pilled, on this political stuff, that they don't follow just this state media narrative, because in Germany it is state-owned media actually, and they actually also say, this is all brainwashing. I don't have a TV anymore. I don't read newspapers anymore. This is all bullshit.
That's crazy. I did not know that. It's like the British too, and like BBC is state owned. just like, so German, is it Reuters?
No.
No.
In Germany, it is the öffentlich-rechtlicher Rundfunk. That is basically the public broadcasting, and that includes radio and television. It doesn't include print media, but they are so infiltrated by the two big parties, or three actually, the Green Party also. So we have the Social Democratic Party, the Christian Conservative Party, which is actually also a socialist party now,
Of course.
under Merkel, and there's the Green Party, which are basically green communists. And there is a Communist Party also, Die Linke, and then we have this new, we have the classical Liberal Party, the FDP, and they don't play a role anymore now. They're struggling to get elected at all, to make it into parliament. And then there is this new alternative for Germany, which is a new, like, conservative or more, they're pretty much like the Christian Conservative Centrist Party used to be before Merkel. So nothing that they say would have been controversial just 20 years ago under Kohl, but they call them racist now, right? But the thing is that even the print media are infiltrated by the big parties, and they're dependent on the parties. That makes them, even though they're not state media, quasi on the party narrative. But when it comes to television and radio, then you have this public broadcasting, and every household has to pay a fee. It's a household fee, and it doesn't matter if you have a TV or a computer or a radio or not. Every household has to pay that. You can even go to jail if you don't pay that.
What?
Even though they are reluctant on that now because of the media backlash, when you send a single mother who's on welfare to prison because she doesn't want to pay that stuff. But they put people to jail because of that.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, they want to avoid a precedent where people get the impression, oh, so it's okay to not pay that? Maybe I shouldn't pay that because I don't really watch TV, right? Because nobody wants to pay that really. And people are basically forced to pay for their own indoctrination. And it goes even further.
To pay for their own propaganda.
Yeah, it's not only indoctrination. They're mocking us. They are deriding us on public broadcasting. They're literally saying that Germans are scum, and we have to pay for it, right?
Wow.
That is pretty unsatisfying, the situation, but I don't see how it can be changed in this system that we have, right, where all the parties are basically in bed with each other. They're in bed with the media, with the big corporations. It's really a wall of kind of overlapping interests, and everybody is trying to cover their bodies. It's really hard. And with my videos, I try to at least explain to people what the hell is going on here, because it can all be explained. We're not complete lunatics. Of course, when you look at what is at stake, then yes, we are lunatics. Yes, but we're not just stupid. It has reasons, and there is a history to it, and it grew organically to where we are now. It's a very bad situation, but I try to make foreigners, at least those who have the patience to listen. I know I have my big weakness is that I cannot be on point, but I try to explain them why Merkel is in power, why we re-elect her, and why she might get re-elected again by the end of the year. Because people from the outside, they don't get it, They look at us and think, why are you doing that? What is wrong with you?
East Germany.
Yeah.
It's like she's from East Germany, so it's like I always thought West Germany, had its shit together. So why would they let an East German run? I know. I'm kind of like creating an artificial divide between East and West now that you're unified. But it's like, you wouldn't want someone who's been under communism for like the past 40, 50 years to suddenly just run your country. I mean, that's just my bias. But that would be my first reaction. I'm like, wow, you keep electing an East German who's making the country more and more socialist. Is that the right thing?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of talk right now about how the Soviet Union tried to undermine the morals of Western countries by via the universities, for example, by brainwashing and by propagating cultural Marxism, for example. And if they could do that in the United States, where we see the results of that subversion policy, or this defeating the morals of society. We see that now with the SJWs. You know, I mean, it started after World War II. The Soviet Union infiltrated the United States, and then do you think that would be easier or harder to do in Germany, where both parts were together, where they had family ties, where they spoke the same language? I mean, all these effects, all this infiltration and undermining the psyops that the Soviets did in the US with smashing success was in an even higher degree has been done to Western Germany. So all these intellectuals, all the professors, all these teachers, you know, they don't see themselves as Marxists maybe, but they are. They definitely are, and they educate children in that manner, and they propagate this brainwashing, and so there are two people from Eastern Germany, two kinds of people. There are the people who profited from the system and who are still kind of holding to Marxist ideas, and then there are the people who suffered under that system, and they are actually more opposed to this authoritarianism than the Western Germans. So this is why you have all these protests in the East now, this Pegida movement in Dresden and something. These are, for the most part, people who still know how it is to live under a dictatorship. So they are actually more freedom-loving than the Western Germans in a way.
Wow.
But the other people from the East, oh, they're Marxists, of course, like all these Western communists who were, via the universities and the propagation of cultural Marxism, I think they have been heavily brainwashed.
Wow. So, how many terms does Merkel get if she keeps getting reelected? Is there a limit?
There is no limit. No. Helmut Kohl, for example, I think he came in power in '82 or something, and he stayed until 98 or something, right? So there is no limit. So if you get reelected by the people, then you get reelected. Bam. And in a way, I should say, it is actually the parliament that we vote for. We don't vote for the chancellor. It is just then that we determine what party gets how many seats in the parliament, and then these parties have to negotiate with each other and find a possible coalition to get the majority together, and they have to agree on a program, and then they would basically decide on who the chancellor is, and the chancellor is normally decided by the biggest party in the government coalition then.
That makes sense. And that's why it's much harder for Germans to change the system. I get it now. Because if the parliament's all in bed with each other, then holy shit, how do you vote out enough of them to change the system? Yeah. It's not like America. You can vote for your president that's different and not in bed with Congress if you're not happy with the people in Congress.
Yeah, so we have these, as I said, so traditionally we have two big parties and then small parties. And the big parties is the Social Democrats and the Christian centrists or conservatives. And you would really need to have an outcome where both these parties are losing most of their seats. And that will never happen.
Yeah, that's never going to happen.
That will never happen. I mean, if you just look at the average German small town or village, the guy from the Social Democrats or the Christian Conservatives, he is in 10 clubs at least. Like soccer club, firefighters, singers, music band, whatever, arts club, museum club. He has his buddies everywhere. Everyone wants that guy to win because then they know that there is stability, continuity, and things will just go on, you know. So there is this network that they have, and it's not really corruption. It's just like you need to know people, you need to be friendly to them, you need to know what to expect from them, and they are just feeling comfortable with these guys. And throughout all the age groups of Germany, to get all those people from all different regions, from different income classes, you would need all these people to get to abandon their candidates that they voted for since forever. Yeah. And quite frankly, our life just doesn't suck that much yet.
Yes, exactly.
The suffering is not there. Our life is good. Our standard of life is high. So what country would completely overthrow the system when they don't suffer yet? And this is the thing about people like me. uh, I live a very comfortable life. I have no reason to complain, but I see the danger on the horizon. I see it coming, and if I just take my situation now, or maybe for the next 10 years, I have nothing to fear. But I fear for the future of maybe the next generation, or when I want to retire. So this is not an immediate danger or concern. It is long term, mid to long term, and this is what people always push aside. They always care about the immediate stuff first, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't see much hope. Sorry, spoiler.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
see
I mean,
much hope for a change of government.
I see so many parallels between what the Roman Empire was like. I mean, I'm sure those people in the more central parts of the Roman Empire were living very comfortably. They were watching their gladiatorial games. They were very comfortable. They didn't give a fuck that the borders were slowly shrinking as migrants were coming in, and the empire was at first fighting them off, then making deals, then forced to make deals. I mean, it got bad. It's like at first they were making deals on Roman terms to settle the migrants. Eventually, the Roman Empire declined so much they kept getting defeated. So now the migrants made their terms, and then eventually they were hiring these migrants to fight off other migrants. It got to that point where the Roman Empire had to like fight with the kings of the different groups that used to be, subjugated, but now they were fighting on equal terms to fight off other migrants.
I mean, one of our biggest hero, Hermann, he defeated the Romans in the Teutoburg forest. He was trained in the Roman army. He was an officer in the Roman army. One of our biggest national heroes. And by the way, we are making deals with Erdogan now. So that already tells you that we're basically finished. Yeah.
Wow. It's almost like karma. It's like the Germans defeated the Romans, and now the Germans are getting defeated back by other people.
Yeah, I mean, we became so successful. We adopted this high Western culture. We became the heirs of the classical tradition, and now we became decadent. This is the way. I mean, roughly speaking, how I would phrase it.
And it's funny that you phrase it that way, because Americans, at least American intellectuals, think that America is the heir to Greco-Roman tradition. It's funny. Every Western nation wants to think that it's the real heir to Greco-Roman tradition. But the ultimate truth is no one is, because most of that knowledge was destroyed and kept by the Muslims. That's the one thing people forget. There's so much blame going on about Muslims, but the Muslims kept a lot of the Greco-Roman knowledge. And it was only during the Crusades, when they started reconquering a lot of the cities, that they started finding all that knowledge again, because Europe was in a pretty dark place. And then they're like, oh, wow, there's all this great stuff that we lost.
Yeah, that is one channel. Yeah, there were also the Irish monks, by the way. A lot of Central Europe was re-Christianized by Irish missionaries, and they, in their libraries of the monasteries in Ireland, they had all that stuff.
That's very interesting. See, that I did not know.
Yeah. So and actually, by the time when the Crusades came along, we were still a bit rambunctious, maybe, but the Dark Ages were over definitely by that time. Mm-hmm. So this turning back of the Dark Ages that precedes the Crusades by centuries. So I do not agree wholeheartedly with that. So the Middle Ages were actually in many ways much more enlightened than what we have nowadays, actually, even though their engineering skills were maybe lagging behind still. But in many ways they had a lot of very modern thinkers already. And at least for Germany, I would say, it was the Irish monks who did a lot of that.
That's so interesting. Do you have a video on that on your channel?
No, not really. There is a great book about it. It's called, I forgot who the author is, but it's called How the Irish Saved Civilization. It's a very interesting read.
Oh, I gotta check this out.
So I'm not saying that the Muslims didn't have any part in that. Of course, they preserved a lot of the culture of the people that they conquered. But I think in a lot of European monasteries, a lot of that stuff was also hidden, and the church really actively tried to re-civilize and to re-Christianize these heathen Christians, so my ancestors, And in a lot of battles, it was also then decided that there are these stories like the king feels forsaken by his heathen gods, and then he says, he prays in all his desperation to the Christian God, and he says, if you grant me this victory, then I will take over your faith. And this is of course interesting because the Christian God is not a god of war, but these heathens, they didn't know that, right? To them it was just a powerful guy, So they adopted it as they had totally warped, strange ideas about Christianity, and this is why the early heathen Christians in Europe were nothing like actual Christians, like they should be according to Scripture. But that's why we call them heathen Christians, and I am a heathen Christian too, right? I don't go back to the Jewish line or something, but it is. It was kind of a blending of this warlike Germanic culture that became Christianized, and you still see that in a lot of cultural phenomena like Christmas trees or Easter bunnies. This is all heathen, of course.
Interesting. Yeah, the Christmas tree came from Germany, right?
I think so, but definitely European paganism, or the Easter bunny is also a fertility symbol, and I think Easter and I think Christmas at least is basically the winter solstice. So they choose also the time when we celebrate these festivals, so that it would align with the heathen festivals, so to speak, as a competition first, and then they took it over completely, and now it's just Christmas, right? The birth of Jesus. But it used to be winter solstice, which is an important heathen festival. And actually in Northern Europe, and many people still are pagans. So I know a physics professor, for example, he's a pagan. He prays to Odin and Thor. So
wow,
it's not a joke. So this is not some LARPing. They are actually European pagans.
That's amazing. It's like there's a comeback of all that traditional mysticism that was done away when Constantine and all those people decided, hey, let's make the Roman Empire, let's make whatever afterwards, let's make it all Christian. It's the whole history behind how the Roman Empire decided to adopt Christianity. It's actually pretty brutal. Like they forced it on everyone once Constantine decided, and then his successors they really were brutal about it.
Oh yeah, well, in the beginning, one should say Christians were also persecuted.
Exactly. They went from being persecuted, and then when Constantine prayed to that God and won that civil war, and then he was like, "Oh shit, okay, I guess this God's on my side." Yeah, it's a very brutal history.
Yeah, I mean, you see that also during the Reformation. It doesn't really come out in my video. I made a video about Martin Luther, for example, but what I would also say about that is that, of course, he was persecuted by the church, and they wanted to punish him for heresy and all that stuff. So he's quote unquote the victim and the underdog and the guy that the evil big emperor and the Catholic Church are going after. But then when he succeeded actually in realizing his reformed Lutheran church in some of the eastern areas in Germany, actually all the Catholics had to leave. He expelled them, or had them expelled, because I think people always realize that this doesn't end well, I think throughout history you can see, and you can always blame the guy who kicked out the others, but I think before that group was the persecuted one. You can always see. So it was like that with the Christians in Rome. It was like that with the Protestants in Germany. Like when the Protestants succeeded in a region, they kicked out all the Catholics or had them convert. Because there is this understanding that this peaceful coexistence just doesn't work. So it's either all of them are Protestants or all of them are Catholics in one domain under a ruler.
Yeah. The only real way for people with that level of like ideological clash to live together is if there's some sort of higher power keeping them in check. So if there's like some kind of higher authority, whether it's a government or something, or a group of people to prevent them from fighting. Because once you remove that, then it's exactly like you said, it's going to become homogenous. One group's going to kick the other group out or kill the other group or convert the other group.
Yeah, but this never ends well. I mean, you see
No,
that
it never
happened
does.
that happened in Yugoslavia, right?
Yeah.
Yugoslavia was very diverse and kept together by a powerful authority. And once that fell away, we had the Balkan War, right?
Yeah, it
So
was
I
horrible.
think forcing or Austria, Hungary, the KNK monarchy, it was also a ethnically mixed state, you know, Austria, Hungary, you know, that also didn't end well. So
Yeah.
it seems like this artificially keeping different things together under one banner, it works for a certain time, but when this charismatic strong ruler is dying or something happens, then civil war is a certainty almost.
I think the only country in my recollection that broke up peacefully was Czechoslovakia. Like Czechoslovakia broke up without a war. They kind of just one day decided, okay, it's not working. Bye bye.
Yeah. And if there are no disputes, or
it's not that simple that they just one day said bye bye. But they didn't have.
Yeah, that's true. And that is actually a very, very tough thing to do. It requires high levels of discipline and organization within the respective groups and strong leadership that are both really want to keep the peace and do everything, and also maybe deal with some hot-blooded people in their own ranks then. But especially if there are territories or cities where both groups live and that are important for the identity of both of them. Just think about Jerusalem or something. Both sides claim that as theirs, kind of. What do you do then?
Exactly. And it makes it interesting talking about this subject because there's so many countries that you watch all these YouTube channels and they think, oh, within the next 20 years, this country's going to break up. Like, you know, people are saying, oh, Scotland's going to leave the UK, or maybe Spain might break up or something. It's so interesting, but it's much harder than people think for a country to break up.
Yeah, it is. Definitely. Yeah. It's also very hard to find together. So.
That's very true.
I can say as a German.
Yeah. Germany took a long time.
Yeah. It took a long time. But
and then once you became a country, you guys lost a war and then got broken up almost.
No, I was referring to the reunification in 1990.
Oh, you're talking about after World War II.
But that is actually also true. Yes, finding together for the Germans was that was a difficult birth. Yeah.
It's so interesting. I almost took a European history course in college. I kind of wanted to, but I just didn't have room in my schedule. But it's because Europe did shape the world mostly in the 19th, 20th century. So it's like you really have to understand where Europe came from to understand why the world's so kind of fucked up now. So it's like I wish I learned that. I mean, it's not like I can't just learn it on my own, but it would have been cool if I had room in my schedule to take that course. There's gaps in my knowledge of European history that I want to fill.
Yeah, maybe not all of that is important or of practical importance now, but a lot of it is. Yeah, I think you're right. Because back then, especially still in World War I, Europe was the world, people always say.
Yeah. And like it's shaped how. Like if you look at the Middle East or the current Middle East, or you look at Africa, a lot of the reason why it's so screwed up was because of European meddling. And like when I was in college, right, because I went to an Ivy League school, so it was very diverse. All my African friends, no matter what country they came from, they'd be like, fuck the British. The way that Africans thought about the British was the way that like Chinese people thought about Japanese people. It's like, fuck those people, man. They fucking think so highly of themselves. They screw over the world. It's really funny.
Yeah, this is, and nowadays it's why there is a lot of anti-Americanism, I think.
Now it's fuck America.
Or in Europe, I mean, people hate the Germans now in Europe. I mean, even though they when they have German friends, of course they like those people because they don't think that Germans are innately evil or something. But in a lot of countries there is a lot of growing anti-German sentiment. And I just hope that people would understand, or I hope that people are smart enough to understand that there is a lot of opposition in Germany, and it's just not that easy to overthrow your system overnight, and that we're also not really, what is the right word? We cannot really govern ourselves also. Like, we still are dependent on the US, I would say. A sovereign nation, that is the word. I wouldn't describe Germany as a sovereign nation, really. And
Interesting.
a lot of stuff, and I don't want to divert blame now or responsibility, but so people always say that Europe is just basically German rule or Merkel dictatorship. I can understand why people think that way, but a lot of times other countries also agree with us, and they just don't really make that public so much. And I think that the Netherlands and before they quit, actually, the UK, and some of the and this is one of the reasons why the UK left, I think, when it's the North against the South, for example, in fiscal policy or in debt crisis or something, a lot of people just point to Germany, but it's not only Germany who wants austerity, for example, which is probably the biggest reason for anti-German sentiment in the EU now.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. And it's very interesting that you acknowledge how dependent Germany is still on America. It's true. I mean, America has its bases in Germany. I mean, I'm sure Germany wouldn't flex so much muscle if America just pulled out its bases, military bases.
Oh, I think we could just increase our military spending then. And we're not surrounded by enemies at the moment, so we would have enough time to build up our military.
You have
again.
Poland as a buffer.
But the thing is, they say we should do that, but I think when we would really put our economic power more into the military and build up a military commensurate with our size, maybe, people would be afraid. They would be freaked out again. Yeah. And then they would start to increase military spending, and then we would have World War I again or something.
Yeah.
This is the point. I mean, this is why Kohl and all these politicians, Adenauer, they try to solve the German question. Yeah? So European history is a lot about the German problem. Yeah? Germany is this big country in the middle of the EU, which is too powerful to be contained, really. But when we really build our military, then people feel afraid, and they team up against us. And when we want to be weak, like now, and we want to kind of just settle things diplomatically, then they also feel like we're some kind of dictatorial force, or we're too important or something. But about the US, I want to say that Merkel's phone, actually, and a lot of the important people in Germany, influential people from the military, from the industry, and from politics, they were spied on by the Americans. They used specialized antennas from the embassies, the American embassies, to directly read out phone conversations. Yeah. So and our Secret Service is reporting directly to the CIA, for example. So it's not even working for us. Our Secret Service is spying on us for America, by the way. Yeah. And so our Secret Service is basically an outlet of the CIA. It's a branch.
Yeah. Well, the thing about surveillance is what people don't realize is basically all the information you share is being spied on by someone. That's what people don't realize. Like, the terms of service you don't read, basically it hands over everything you do in whatever medium you use to
that
people.
Is true. Yeah. But I mean, it even went so far that those were quote unquote secure phones that were used by our chancellor, right? And with this specialized antenna from the Berlin embassy, they could read out those conversations, even though it was quote unquote, the safe connection.
Yeah. People don't realize that, like, you don't even have to, even if your network is secure, they have technology that they can go through the wiring, like the electrical wiring. So not through Wi-Fi, not through any sort of communication cables. They can go through the electrical wiring and take information that from the computer that's nearby. That's how advanced technology is. So it's really hard to have something secure.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the only hope for people is that you're so far under the radar and you're absolutely unimportant and no one knows your name, and there's billions of people on the planet, so why would they read out my files? Yeah.
But
when you're
or you're just such a moral, upstanding person that they never have reason.
Oh yeah. Of course. Who would do that? Yeah. Because that would be wrong. We only spy on evil people, but these morally upstanding people, yeah, that would be crossing a line, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I will have to go now, but let's have another conversation soon. I love what we talked about.
Yeah, it was pretty enjoyable. Yeah, I really liked it too. And yeah, I like your channel and you, especially for how open-minded you are, that you talk to all sorts of people from different backgrounds. And I think this is, I should do that more often, I guess. But I think this is the whole idea, I guess, of these YouTube channels. I hope so, not be an echo chamber so much, but talk to all sorts of different people. Yeah?
Exactly. And a few viewers actually requested you. That's why
really?
I wanted to reach out to you, and there was no email on your channel. That's why I just responded to a comment. Thank goodness you commented. It was it was perfect timing.
Yeah. Okay, that is. Wow, damn it. Maybe I'm not under the radar anymore. I should. Yeah. That's interesting.
So what I'll do is, I'll keep monitoring my news and seeing where Europe ends up, and I'll do some research. I'm going to read up on European history, the parts that I haven't had much sort of knowledge about, and I would love to talk to you more about this whole thing. The whole Irish monks thing that you talked about was so fascinating. Something I've never known.
Yeah, I still have the book here, so I hope that isn't fake news, but it was a good one. No, I mean, I personally know that a lot of the cities, at least, there were Irish missionaries in the, I don't know, 5th century maybe, so really early, dark ages, really. So a lot of these monks came here on a mission, so that part is at least true.
Cool.
But it's an interesting angle, I think, that many people don't know about also. Anyway,
exactly.
So but you want to really shame me, huh? Because I have no idea about Chinese history, I have to say.
No, it's all good, man. Chinese history is complicated, but it's very repetitive too. So you learn how one cycle happens, and then you're like, oh, okay. And then you see the cycle break in 1911, and you're like, oh, that's why China got so fucked up.
Yeah, so history goes way back in China. I mean, crazy.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lot of, I wouldn't call it sanitization, but there's a lot of selective record keeping in Chinese history. They're very vague, and they only, history is always written by the winners, right?
They didn't want to lose their heads, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. Chinese history is so vague, so it's really hard to know what happened in early Chinese history unless you have archaeological evidence, and it's Chinese history is being rewritten all the time. It's so interesting because they're finding new archaeological evidence for so much stuff, and they were finding fucking blue-eyed white people in China back when you thought China didn't have that kind of, this was very early Silk Road days, and there were blue-eyed looking white people that they found very well fossilized and preserved.
Some merchants from Europe or something.
Yeah, merchants from probably Persia, because there are blue-eyed people in Persia, but they could have come from Turkey. They could have come from, I don't know, somewhere in Greece or something. You never
Asia
know.
Minor,
Yeah. So it's very interesting. So Chinese history, as long as there's not another war, we'll see a lot of cool things that we'll learn from Chinese history, I think, within this century.
Yeah, looking forward to that. I mean, even the Japanese they have problems with China, of course, but they really love Chinese history, and they the early seals that you see are from Chinese emperors, so they pride themselves in, our town or the ruler in this area has been recognized or had ties to China already back then, and so they're really proud of that.
In some very funny ways, Taiwan, Korea, and Japan kept aspects of Chinese culture better than China did, because China had the whole communism thing that fucked its own culture up. So you go to Japan, you go to Korea, you go to Taiwan, and if you combine the three and pick out the good elements, you'll see what Chinese culture was back in the day when it was in a prosperous time.
I heard that about Taiwan, yeah, and I know that the Japanese, they still stick to the old Chinese characters, whereas the Chinese reformed or simplified the writing system or the characters, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, so the Communist Party simplified the writing system. And so Taiwan, if you go to Taiwan, you go to Hong Kong and Singapore, you'll get kind of the traditional Chinese. Japanese is the part of Japanese that still uses Chinese characters. It's not exactly the same.
Okay.
So if you want to see what Chinese culture, like at least the writing was before the simplification.
No, I just mean
Taiwan.
the symbols. I just mean the symbols. It's themselves, aren't they?
Yeah, I would say Japanese probably borrowed, I would say 60% of the Chinese symbols. It's not complete.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So Taiwan or Hong Kong would be the best place to see all the traditional Chinese in its full glory, so to speak.
Cool. Yeah. That must be really interesting for people who like
and
history of China.
To all my Chinese fans, I'm not like pro Taiwan or pro Hong Kong. I'm just telling the truth here. So I know a lot of people get triggered whenever I talk highly of Taiwan. It's like, just grow the fuck up. Every country, and people get mad at me when I call Taiwan a country, but every culture has its own positives, okay? Yeah. And don't get triggered when I speak positively of something that just because from birth you've been taught they were evil doesn't mean they're evil. I just want to make that clear to some of my Chinese American audience, because they get really mad when I talk positively of Taiwan.
Yeah, I trigger people constantly, like, what, you're married? Unsubbed.
Yeah.
Well, what can you do?
But anyways, let's maybe one day we can bring your wife on an interview too. We can talk together.
Oh, I don't know about that.
She's very shy?
Yeah, I think so. We normally don't discuss stuff like that, really.
I see.
We keep our political ideas and these things kind of we don't really talk about that. Let's put it that way. It's part of our arrangement.
Cool, smart. Don't mix politics with marriage.
Yeah, we tried it.
In-laws with marriage, and don't mix politics with marriage. And I think the third thing is don't mix money with marriage. Like don't mix money problems with marriage. And I think your marriage is 90% there.
Yeah. So we tried that in the beginning, the discussions. I mean, just because Germans love to discuss all sorts of things, it was a disaster. So
of course.
But maybe that's a story for another time.
Yeah, that's a story for another time. So let's stay in touch. You have my Skype now.
Sure.
And you know, I'll comment on your videos more, and then we'll just keep play it by ear, and let's have a conversation again soon.
All right.
Awesome, man. Everyone watching, this was Red Pill Germany. I will put an end card and a link and everything so you guys can follow him if you haven't already. And please press subscribe on my channel and his channel. Press a like on my channel and his channel, and then leave comments, etc. Thank you guys so much, and thank you, Red Pill Germany.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
All right. Bye.